Good, how are you?
Good, you guys have had a lot of ignites up to this point, yes?
Quite a
So
few.
you're like totally drinking from a fire hydrant, drowning at this point. How are we feeling so far?
Take a life preserver if you have one.
All right, I'm gonna introduce myself real quick, and I think you guys have already gone through multiple introductions amongst yourselves. But I am Valerie Wilson. I am an investor of Foothills and Avenues, so you'll see me pop around in each of the offices from time to time. If you guys ever have any questions and you want to pull me aside because something doesn't make sense in your world, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can also reach out to me via phone and email and that kind of stuff. So always here for support for you guys. We've all been new agents. We're not always starting off as, you know, these high level agents that are working at 10 million volume and everything else, right? We all started new. We know where you're at. And we want to collaborate with you. Okay. So going into, you're now at the level of negotiating the deal. So I believe Amanda just finished teaching make and receive offers, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now you're into the next part of this. I want to kind of expand negotiate the deal into a little more of now you've got it under contract, right? Because I think that negotiating is one of your biggest skill sets in this business. And so my first question to everybody out there is, when do you think the negotiation starts?
The beginning of the process.
Say that again.
Oh, before you even put in an offer.
Okay. And before that, when does your negotiating start?
Whenever you're trying to nail down the client.
When you're selling yourself.
Creating a relationship, right? Creating trust, meeting people, you know, and what are all the different resources we use to start that negotiation? Face-to-face, right? Email. How many of you guys are sending emails out there introducing yourself to people? Facebook, campaigns, text messages, right? So we have a lot of different avenues of how we're communicating. So I want you guys to think about that as we're wrapping this all together, right? Is how we're communicating, what kind of venue we're communicating through. Communication is a big part of the negotiation, okay? So when we're going through this process, you have to also remember, how is somebody receiving you? And that's why I bring up your avenue of how you're communicating and everything else, right? How many times have we sent an email out there and how you received it was completely different than the person that sent it, right? And women out there, I'm sorry, I'm just going to point us all out. We get real emotional and real testy real fast. Why did you send that to me, right? I do that to my husband all the time. And he's like, what are you talking about, right? So we have to remember how we're receiving things, how we're sending stuff, reread it, read it again. Make sure that if you're receiving that email, how does it come across? Think about those kind of things, right? When you're talking and communicating. So when you're trying to create that trust, what are some of the things that you do when you start creating that trust with people? We're a quiet group.
Ask them questions, use their name.
Thank you. Thank you. Asking questions. Okay. So we don't just start talking right off the bat, right? And most of the time, do we even know what that other person wants or needs? We usually don't, right? So we want to ask the questions and get it started, right? So when you're starting to negotiate, you need to first think about, what is the outcome that you want to have when you're negotiating this. And I hate reading this stuff, guys. I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm going to be a lot of ad-libbing through this. If I start reading to you guys, I'm going to be like breaking up and boring and everything else. So I might completely get off track with this whole thing. But you know, you want to figure out what kind of outcome where, you know, when you're wanting to win this negotiation, right? What does winning look like to you guys?
Getting a signed contract, getting to closing.
Yeah. What?
Follow the
I always-
script, lady.
I can't deal with it. I'll get fired by Margaret, it's okay.
Did you call that you back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you just told it to me off. All right, your outcome, so you wanna win. How do you wanna win? Do you wanna win and be nasty and win? Do you wanna win and be nice to people? Do you want to win where it's beyond this point that you get to negotiate with them again, right? So when is your relationship going, right? It's starting here and it just keeps on going. And hopefully by the time that you created the relationship with somebody and now you've got them to working with you, to then now you've got a deal under contract with them. So now you're negotiating with the other broker. And hopefully that relationship with that other broker is also in a positive manner so that then you can continue through the deal and get to the finish line, right? Because why are we in real estate? We're trying to get to a finish line, right? But then your finish line doesn't end right there. It keeps on going when you want to continue maybe seeing that broker again. Are you gonna face them again another deal and they're gonna be like, yeah, I worked with her, I know what she's like, right? Or, oh, I can't wait to work with her again, right? Or him, sorry, Salvador. So, you know, you gotta remember about where it goes and what your outcome is and how far this is gonna go, what you're gonna be remembered as, what your reputation is. Right, I'm gonna tell you right now, there's a lot of people out there, you'll start remembering going, you know what, they're on my bad list. I don't wanna work with them again. And it will affect them when you start getting those offers in with your contracts, right? And let's just be honest, you're like kind of judgy. I remember what she did to me. She's super nice. She wanted to win the deal and now we're negotiating the rest of the contract and she was absolutely horrible to work with, right? And he or she, right? You get a lot of women, I'm just gonna be honest too, you get a lot of women where they feel like they've got to come across almost over empowering. They gotta make a statement, they gotta make sure that you know they're in charge, that kind of thing. You know, and then you also, and I'm not saying it's all women, but you gotta kind of watch for that. And I think a lot of that comes from lack of learning, lack of having this right here, Ignite, right? And the lack of how to communicate, the lack of how to be nice, how to work through things, how to work together, how to communicate and all that kind of stuff. With guys, same thing. You know what, I'm a guy and I'm gonna tell you how to do things. You'll get a lot of that stuff, right? And so how do we overcome those things when we're negotiating, okay? So one of the things that, as you're getting ready to negotiate a deal, and we'll just go ahead and start with when you're getting the offers on a contract, okay? And you're gonna get multiple offers. And in this market, it's feisty. In fact, it is almost not even fun, to be honest, because you got people out there that they're gonna wanna win the deal. But how are they trying to win the deal with you? Okay, so you're gonna have somebody that comes across and they're gonna say, oh yeah, you know, we'll give you everything that you want. We're gonna come in $100,000 over the your listing price. They'll just come right in and they want it, right? But is price the only thing that's in your deal?
Oh, no.
What else is in your deal?
Post occupancy,
Maybe
inspection.
deadlines,
Mhm.
title company that you're working with, right? That makes a big difference too. When you're out there and you're making offers on somebody else's listing, take a look at what title company they're using. Are they reputable? Are they gonna get you to the closing? Are they gonna get the documents that you need to get that closing to the end? I've worked with a few title companies. They don't know what they're doing. It takes $1,500 to start a title company. Think about that, right? So, you know, again, reputation. And if you're working with Land Title, Andrea, you know, or up here, we're working with Chicago Title a lot, you know, again, it's their reputation. And what are those representatives doing for you? So that's also part of your negotiating process, right? Is who are all the people that are going to help you behind the scenes to make this happen? Okay. What's another part of the contract that's negotiable? There's 20 pages to the contract. Price is one line.
Inspection.
Inspections. What about appraisals?
Mhm.
Contingencies? What else?
Dates and deadlines?
Dates and deadlines? What about how much they put down? What kind of loan they have? Right? So you need to understand your contract is one of the things that you also need to do. So when you have contract classes happening in the office, the listing contract, the buy side contract, getting to then the buy sell contract, make sure that you're taking those classes over and over again. You want to know your contract really well. I cannot tell you how many times you think you know that contract and it comes time to have all those offers come in. Do you know it well enough to know all the details and the differences between every single offer that comes in? Right? And if you're not prepared, you're gonna be panicking. Okay, so make sure that you're preparing before you get to that point. So before you get to a listing, what do? You prepare. You go on MLS, you find out what all the comparables are, you get your listing presentation, you get your questionnaires ready, right? Every listing appointment. You got to do the same thing for a contract. So let's say I've got a listing out there and I'm going to get ready now to receive offers so I can negotiate at a high level. Okay, so one of the things that I do, and this is just kind of a tip and trick, is I actually create a sheet and I can send it out to everybody that prepares everybody of how to negotiate the deal with me. And I will put it in the MLS supplements ahead of time. And it basically says, here's the title company and the representative I'm working with. Here's the earnest money house. Here's how we're going to receive it. Here is all the things that the seller does or doesn't want. And it's going to be a list. I want a contract because I took that sheet and I ripped off and duplicated it. Okay, so I actually learned that from an agent from actually another office. And I wanted to win the contract with her. And I did not win that contract because of price. I was not the highest. But I paid attention to her sheet that she filled out everything saying, here's what the seller wants. So you know what I did? I opened up that sheet and I had my contract and I started filling out my contract exactly according to that sheet that she had. Boy, was that a preparation for me because it was like, yes, I'm ready to go. I know exactly what they want and this is what we're going to do. And I had a great conversation with my buyer saying, here's what they want. Do you still want this house? So now I've got this great conversation going on over here too with the buyer. So your negotiation is not just this one lineal thing, right? It's a lot of things. It's the broker, it's how you're writing your contract, it's how you're talking to your buyer. It's also how you talk to the lender. So if you've got the buyer and you're working with the lender, what kind of lender are you working with? Are you working with Wells Fargo? Do you know what you're getting into? If you deal with a Wells Fargo, a Chase, sometimes a credit union, do you know what you're getting into? Right? And you can look into those. And I believe Mitch Friedman and also Mike Sadowski, they both have access to look up other lenders, believe it or not, because they want to take care of you. They may not always get the deal with you, but they'll look up things for you. You can actually look up another lender. And I had Mike find a lender, guy one time for me because I had no idea what the name of this company was or anything else. And I'm like, what is going on? He was a Home Depot worker 3 months prior. And I'm not saying that he can't start off someday, right? But I just know who I'm working with. And I was wondering how much he knew about his underwriting, how well he was going to get this deal to the end. How much did he know about these buyers? How much do the buyers know about him? Right? And so it's all that communication too, right? So you want to have all that preparation done. Make sure you've got your lender done and ready to go. And then it's smooth sailing. You know, that's why we have Mitch. That's why we have Mike. That's why we have some of the lenders that we really make good relationships so that we can just get in that deal and go. And we're not panicking, talking to a buyer going, well, why are you using Wells Fargo, right? You don't want to be doing that when you're writing the contract. You want to have all of that stuff done before you're writing that contract, okay? So when you've got the lender information all together and the buyer is ready to go with this whole list of things that we know the seller wants, it makes that transition so much smoother. And when I'm talking to those brokers, being nice is probably one of the best things you can do when you're negotiating. Okay. And I'm talking about just at the beginning, because right, that's the honeymoon period at the very beginning. And then what happens after that? Everything falls apart. We always hear about that. The inspections makes everything fall apart. The appraisal makes everything fall apart. Communicate, over communicate, right? Communicate well, just be yourself too. Hey, how you doing? So what does the seller need? You know, how can we get through this? You know what, we're gonna do inspections, but we're not gonna, you know, we're only gonna do an inspection termination if we really find some things. Well, guess what? Did you know that you can continue negotiating after that, even if you have a termination deadline and you want to terminate? Everything is negotiable. Think about that. Everything. You can renegotiate that deadline. You can revive a contract. You can keep on going if you really want, because if you have a willing buyer and you have a willing seller, do you want to get to the end and have that end, right? And you're doing it for your client, not for yourself. So be really careful too, that you don't stick yourself in the middle of all that, right? All right. What are some other things that you can do to prepare for that negotiating at the beginning? Anybody? I don't want to do all the talking.
This is gonna do it, guys. It's gonna be us.
It's always us.
Oh, come on. Have you guys negotiated? I know you guys have negotiated before. If you have children, you negotiate all day long.
Val, we want to challenge the online people. We feel like we do all the talking and we're bored with our talking.
So does Val. It's like I'm not talking the whole time. Come on.
Well, you're going to negotiate a lot when it comes to inspection time, whatever the inspector finds, you know, if the sellers are willing to repair, you know, what the buyers are willing to accept. So there's negotiations going on there as well as the appraisal.
Okay. So do you think you can negotiate what kind of inspector you're using?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you negotiate an appraiser?
No.
Yes, you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Today we learned that you can even negotiate the lender.
Absolutely. I negotiate lenders all the time. Hey, buyer, did you really want to get to the finish line? Yeah, and oh yeah, he's my friend. I just had that happen. Got to closing day. We're all sitting there and he is pouting. My buyer is pouting and he's not happy. And I'm like, good Lord, we should be having balloons and fireworks and everything else. What is going on? He is pissed off at his lender for something that happened at the very end. And I warned him at the beginning. And you don't ever say I told you so, by the way. Don't ever do that. You want to continue the relationship with your client. But yeah, no, yeah, it definitely was a big deal about how much do you know about his company? What do you know about the underwriting? You know, what kind of list of appraisers do they have? I can't tell you how many times I've had even, like you said, you can negotiate the appraiser. You know what? I want this reevaluated. There is no way I missed it by that much when I was listing this house. I had that happen to me out in Brighton, but you know what? You better also know your market. Make sure that you're listing appropriately and that you know what's going on in that market, right?
Hey, Val.
You're getting to that point. So that's your preparation piece, right?
Val, this is Stephanie. The reason I said you couldn't negotiate your appraiser is that I thought the bank or the lender selected the appraiser. And then if it came back low, that you could then go back with comps and, you know, questions.
So up here in the foothills, mostly, not down in the city, because in the city you got lot and block and every third house is the same, right? And up here in the foothills, if you start getting out to more of the rural areas, Golden or wherever, you're gonna find you got meets and bounds. And as a city appraiser, really gonna understand a mountain property, right? And you got septic, and you got views, and you got well, and you got water rights. And you got all these different things that pertain to a rural property versus, you know, the sewer line and all that other stuff that's pretty basic, you know, house to house, right? So they're just pulling up a house and going, okay, it looks like this one over here and this one's sold over here and this is what this is gonna be. It's a lot more straightforward. But I'll tell you right now, when I talk to my lender and I'm like, okay, what appraiser is coming up here? You know, have they worked in the foothills? And I never, ever let an appraiser or an inspector go into showing time and just set a time. They're gonna talk to me before they come up to this house. And they start appraising it or inspecting it. Have you appraised houses in the foothills? If you haven't, you're off the list. I'm calling the lender. We're gonna get somebody up here who can do the job. Because I can tell you right now, how many times does an appraiser come up here and they didn't value the views? These views up here, when you're looking at the Continental Divide versus your neighbor across the way, is absolutely very valuable. You know, and you don't want them discrediting that. That's why we priced it accordingly. Oh, my screen moved. Thought I lost somebody. Okay, so you can do that. Same thing with appraisers. There's an appraiser, unfortunately, that has a bad reputation up here. And as soon as I hear, I'm calling that broker. You know what, that inspector, did I say appraiser? Sorry, inspector, is not coming to this house. Because he is doom and he is gloom and he will blow that deal up every single time because he's so proud of how much he thinks he knows. And I tell you right now, inspectors are what? Jacks of everything and masters of nothing. Okay, so you have to be really careful and they're absolutely negotiable, right? Jeff Weishman, by the way, be aware, he will blow your deal up. You know, and you got to get to know those inspectors. So when these inspectors come in and they talk at team meetings and team rallies and stuff, pay attention and get to know them and see who's using them, you know? Okay. So now you know that all those people are negotiable and how much power you have. All right, so when you're starting to negotiate with the other broker and you've got all that set up in the beginning, how are you going to come across when you first start negotiating? So you want to call the broker and you want to get going with the conversation, right? I've got this buyer and you want to bring an offer. How are you going to start that conversation?
Build rapport.
Okay, and how do you do that?
By mirroring them.
So can you mirror them on the phone?
Not necessarily, maybe their personality type though.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's fine. You just got to know what you're getting into, right? You hear their tone, talk like them, right? Kind of imitate them, creates trust, right? Ask questions. So something I just learned the other day, learning all the time in this business, by the way, is we had a gentleman who said that he takes the sticky note and he writes the word wait on it and he puts it on the screen in front of him as he's talking to people either on the Zoom calls or the phone or whatever. And it says, why am I talking? So make sure that when you are asking questions, you listen for the answer. How many times are we talk, and then we forget that we even wanted the answer along that whole way, right? I get a few of those too sometimes. It's like, well, wait a minute, you asked me a question. Did you want the answer to that? Right? And we can do the same thing. We get real excited, right? Okay, I got this offer and I really want to breed to you. And, so what does your seller want? And then you write your contract and it's completely different to the conversation you just had. Did you actually hear what they said? Right? One of the things that got brought up in the previous Ignite was this whole post-closing thing. Are you in that market? Do you know what's going on in your market to know what actually is even attractive to people? You should know almost ahead of time. I mean, most of the time right now, we do have post-closing occupancies, right? Is that always necessarily the case though in some of these markets? When you get to a balanced market or a buyer's market, these post closings are going to go away. Then you're gonna start seeing what next? Concessions. Seller concessions. Right? I want some of this money back. And it's gonna be going towards my closing costs or whatever. They want things financed through is what it is. As long as there's enough closing costs to cover for it, by the way. So don't ever ask for a concession at $20,000 and closing costs are $5,000. It's use it or lose it, just so you know.
Hey
Okay,
Val,
so
when was the last time you saw that?
Recently, actually.
Really? Okay.
And not in the best manner. I never won the contract because I'll tell you right now, a lot of people don't understand what's negotiable, right? So I had a VA buyer and they wanted to finance some of this. So they kept telling me, well, we want to put in, what was it, 2,500 concession. I said, they're not gonna understand this concession that you're wanting to put in here. So let's not put that up front. Let's do to be determined in that seller concession. So believe it or not, again, knowing your contract, what can I do in my contract? Well, you can almost, don't quote me completely, but you can almost do whatever you can in the sections that you fill in, right? You're putting in the price for this house. You can put in whatever for the seller concession. It may not win, you know, or it doesn't have to be an exact amount. It can be to be determined. So we're going to offer you all this money and to be determined additional provisions. We're going to offer additionally this much amount in closing costs so that we can wrap it back around into the loan so it can be financed. Most of the brokers I worked with didn't understand that, what I was doing. I had to keep explaining it. So it didn't really win. It kind of made it a little squirmy, but I kept telling my buyer, it's making the deal kind of weird. And I kept telling him and I kept telling him and he kept not winning. No. Eventually, the negotiation going on with the buyer, when you're not winning over again and over again, what happens? Do they start succumbing to, okay, I guess I'm not gonna do that concession anymore.
Change strategy.
Okay, I'll put a little bit more down. Okay, I'll do the earnest money or whatever, right? How bad do you want this? If you don't want it that bad, I really don't need to practice to keep writing contracts. I'll tell you that right now. And the buyer I'm telling you about right now, I wrote 15 contracts for them and they've moved on to another state.
Woo-woo.
Right? It's gonna happen. It's just one of those markets right now. In a buyer's market, all day long, all the concessions you want, all the inspections you want, right? What are sellers doing right now? What's kind of going on in that mentality? I'm not doing anything and I want 100 grand. So what do we tell our buyers in this negotiating of this contract? So how high do you want to go? And please be prepared that we can try to get some of this back, but we may not. Okay, so you can go after them in inspections. It doesn't mean that the seller's going to succumb. So how high do you really want to go? Where's your comfort level? And I'll tell you right now, I had 3 different buyers I sent away and I said, I cannot financially advise you to do this. You have to remove yourself from some of this anxiety that's going on, some of this excitement that's going on. We get really caught up and I want to win this for the buyers, right? But sometimes we have to remove ourselves and go, I just may not get this one, right? I can't put them in that spot. You have to do the best for your buyers, not for yourself. Okay, so remember that when you guys are getting kind of caught up in a little bit of this excitement of, you know, the higher and higher and higher with this money, you got to talk with your buyers and you got to know what's going on. You got to know what's going on with their world. Are they, you know, can they financially handle this? My buyer that I closed last month, the one that I won without not being the highest price still was over 50,000. There was a deal higher than me at 100,000, but they didn't trust him. 1, because I communicated. 2, because I wrote the contract exactly like her pre-set up offer sheet. And then even in the end, he had got a HELOC ahead of time. And he told me, I got $175,000 sitting in that HELOC. That's gonna be my extra money for this offer. I said, okay. And how much are you putting down, right? You've got to have those conversations. How are you buying this house? Do you know that? You better know that while you're writing those contracts, because you know your contract really well by this point, right? So we, you know, come to the point that I negotiated exactly like he said. Lender said, no problem, he can do this. Great, I just want to make sure. I don't want to be the person that backs out. I do have a reputation of saying what I mean and mean what I say, right? So then when I'm writing this contract, come to find out later on, the lender had to revamp his whole financial world to make it work. Even after all that. Right? So again, really make sure you get down to those details about what they can and can't do. So then when I'm,
Whatever you wanna do, if you put yours, I'll send you that.
do you guys have any questions so far? Am I like on too many bunny trails right now? Hopefully not. All right, so what was I gonna get to? So when you're communicating with that broker, you know, I always try to be myself, to be honest. I can't stand it when somebody calls me and they're trying to fluff and stuff me, right? Oh, how you doing? I got this buyer, they really love the house, so da 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 da, and then I never see the offer. Where are they? What happened? And usually I'm like, so I thought you really love the house. Well, yeah. Oh, so you found something else. Okay. So you got to be careful about those conversations too, right? So feel it out, talk longer. And here's the thing, you're going to get, like in this market, it was a little difficult, you know, when you're getting 12 offers and you got 12 brokers, 12 plus brokers trying to call you to ask you, what does the seller want? Again, why that offer sheet helps you tremendously. Let's put it up front, right? Is that they're all asking you the same question. But you know what I do is I'm like, how well do they carry a conversation on with me on the phone? Right? Like Ashley said, you know, how is this conversation going? How are we getting along, not getting along? You know, either way, I have to be careful about what I say about people. I'm very blunt. You know, I got to be careful because I know everyone doesn't get the same education that we get here at Keller Williams. And I really do appreciate the communication we get here at Keller Williams and the scripts that we learn here. Make sure you're internalizing everything that you're hearing and make it your own, make it natural, right? So, you know, I call Jackie, hey, Jackie, you know, how's it going? You know, so what's going on? How many offers you got right now? You know, this is where my buyer can come in. Is there other things that would be attractive for your seller? Well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, how about this? Well, what do you think about the inspections? You know, I don't want my buyers to not have inspections because I don't think that's smart for either of our parts. They got to know what's going on. But you know, what if, right? Ask those questions. It's okay. You don't know anything going into this. None of us do. Sometimes that listing broker doesn't even know anything about the house. They may not even know a whole lot about their client, right? So maybe you start asking questions to get them to even dig in a little further so that we can all kind of come together to a mutual agreement, okay? When you get to inspections, okay, so now we've kind of advanced a little bit. You win the deal, you get through earnest money, now you're in inspections. Now you got this inspection deadline. So let me make a point that every time you have deadlines, make sure you get those deadlines on your calendar at least one day ahead of time. You do not want to be opening your calendar up this morning going, oh my God, I got an inspection objection deadline today. And then you're going into a panic of how do I write this up, right? Because they can take time. They can take a lot of time. In fact, I'll even start an inspection objection like the day after I go on a contract. I'm just going to go ahead and get it started because I know I'm going to do an inspection objection with this person and I can start writing up some things in there ahead of time and get ready because it takes some time to write some of these things sometimes, right? Make sure you're communicating with the inspector if you're on the buy side. So what's going on? You know, don't just get his report and go, okay, I take your word for it. So what did you mean about the roof with the flashing and whatever? I am not a roofer. I am not a furnace person. I can tell you right now, I still do not understand furnaces and all that stuff today. Okay? I am not a radon expert. I am not a well expert. I am not. What am I an expert in? I am an expert in relationship building. Okay? I'm going to build a relationship with this inspector and I want to find out what's going on through his head, why he stated all these things. Well, an inspector is going to cover their butt, right? That's what they do. They're just going to write everything in there. They're covering their butt because they don't want to be sued any more than anybody else does, right? So make sure you're understanding why they're putting that information in the report. Now you go back to your buyer and you're communicating with them. Now you're back to negotiating with the buyer going, okay, here's what's really going on. Let's go through all of this. And a lot of the times what I do is I will take that information and I will send it to the buyer ahead of time, well ahead of time of the inspection objection, for them to read it, for them to digest it, for them to process it ahead of time. Nothing's worse than when you get bombarded and, oh my God, now I got to make a decision right now. No, none of us like that, right? Let them digest it, let them think about it, let them decide what they think you would be so surprised how many times when I've let my buyers think about things and then I get back to them about 24 hours later and they're like, oh yeah, I just need these little 3 things. And you're like, wow, I thought they were gonna like hammer this report. I was ready, right? They were gonna attack the roof and they were gonna attack the furnace that's 18 years old and everything. Like, no, I just need this little stuff done. That's good enough. You know, or if we could just go ahead and ask for $5,000 or $1,500 or whatever the case may be, right? Let's make this easy because they want to get to the finish line. Most buyers right now, they want to get to the finish line, right? So just knowing all of that ahead of time. Now, once I've talked to my buyer, I actually go to the broker before I send that inspection objection. Nothing ticks me off more than getting an inspection objection at midnight with no communication from the other broker. Don't be that broker. Talk, communicate. If you want to win, communicate. So I will call the other broker and I'll say, okay, so these are some of the things that came up. How will your seller feel about them? You know, I am going to win this for the buyer and the seller now at this point. I want to get them to the end. I do have the seller's best interest. Yes, I am advocating for the buyer and I will, right? But what's going to make this happen all the way to the end? I'm going to get this deal finished one way or another. Let's figure it out. Let's work together. Let's find out, you know, no, seller doesn't like this. Great. I'm going to go back to the buyer. Then I'm going to say, seller feels like this. Is it me that feels like this? No, it's seller that feels like this. So make sure you're communicating that too, right? Buyer, here's what seller said. Here's your options, A or B. It has nothing to do with how I feel, has nothing to do with what I think you should do. Here are your options. Then when they ask you, well, they have their own opinions and that kind of thing. And then they ask you, right? Well, but what do you think? Well, I had this situation with radon, right? I've got my opinion about radon, but I keep my opinion until they ask me about it, right? Proof, no proof, cancer, not cancer, detrimental to your health, not detrimental. I don't know. I'm not an expert. Let's talk to an expert then. If you're that concerned about it, let's talk to an expert. I had a situation even with a well. Somebody came back and they had this company down the hill come up, do a well test. Oh my gosh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. My kid's gonna die, I can't drink the water. Now, how in the world is that possible when I've got sellers living in the house and they haven't died yet? So none of that makes sense to me whatsoever. You gotta have a little bit of common sense going on in some of this stuff, right? So let's go talk to an expert. So I call Rich over at Aquaterra and I say, hey, Rich, you're my expert, what's going on, read this report, I will send him the report, he's not even working for me, he's not been hired, and he will help me. So again, those relationships that you build ahead of time, right? You can always go to those resources, go to those people, ask them the questions. And he tells me what's going on, not only with the well and the water report, with that company that came up here. Because what do they want to do? They want to upsell. Yeah, you need an ultraviolet something or other and some kind of USB, I don't know, it was the craziest thing. And Rich is like, why do we need a USB for your well? What? I mean, this is coming from an expert, right? And I'm like, oh, thank you. I was kind of wondering, I don't know, but thank you. So now I'm taking all my notes and I'm going back and I'm going fact, 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 fact with the other broker. Here's what's going on, right? Now what do you want to do? A or B, okay? Make sure you're working with your facts and less with emotion when you guys are figuring out all this stuff out, okay? Don't feel like when you get to negotiate, when you get to inspections that things have to be done. Even if it's health and safety, it doesn't have to be done. The lender doesn't know anything until you present it to the lender, right? And the lender does not get inspection objections. They get resolutions and they get amend extents. Okay, so when you're working with the objection, this is the point of figure out what buyer and seller want to do. Okay, and what they're willing to work out. And then when you get to a point where seller says, no, I don't want to do those things. I don't care if the house is falling on you. I'm not going to do it and I can get lots of money and I'm leaving. So buyer says, okay, I'll work on it myself, blah, 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 right? So seller says, we'll give you $5,000. So then what you do is an amend extend. It says buyer will credit seller, or no, seller will credit buyer $5,000 to his closing costs at closing. Boom, done. Lender doesn't know why. We're not going to state why. We're not going to tell the lender the roof's falling off. We're not going to tell the lender the deck's falling off. We're not going to tell the lender that there was radon all over the house, right? This is all very negotiable. Okay, so when you guys go into these things and you see stuff on these reports, don't panic. Slow it all down, rein it all in. You got your date set up ahead of time to negotiate this stuff before that deadline. Okay, so you've got to give yourself enough time to do all that, right? It takes time. And that's just one deal. And hopefully you guys will be doing more than just one deal at a time, right? You're going to be doing this multiple deals at different times. Okay, so think about that too. So let's say you get to a point where it terminates and you've got that termination deadline. What are some of your options?
Shut down the deal.
Say that again.
Terminate for your buyers if things haven't gone your way.
You can terminate. What else? Can you extend it? Can you re-talk to that broker and say, well, what do you think? Can we try to work something out? I've done that a few times. Right? Yeah, this is not going well. Let's kind of start over. Let's clean the slate. Let's talk about this. Where can we go with this? You know, your seller doesn't want to do anything. My buyer feels like he's going to die from radon. What can we do? You know, think about the price of the house that you're working on too. If you're at an $800,000 house versus a $300,000 house, think about how much commission you're going to make on an $800,000 house. Is it worth bickering over $1,000? Maybe brokers can help each other out and put in 500 each to make this happen. I don't know. I'm not saying to give up your commission. It's an option. Okay. And you got to evaluate if that option's worth it or not. I'm not looking to put a new roof on anything at any particular time. Uh-oh. But, you know, you just kind of got to sit there and tell yourself, okay, I'm going to make 10,000 on this. Can I give up 500? You know, versus get nothing. You got to think about that too. Does this get so contentious that buyers like not sure what you get accomplished for them. You can get to those points too, right? So what are you gonna do to help this deal get to the end? And again, I do not advise that you give up your commission first. There are other things you can negotiate, right? Coming down a little bit further, you go back to the buyer again. Okay, so it's not, 5,000, but maybe it's 2,500, maybe it's 2,400, maybe it's 2,300, right? You keep up and down, up and down, up and down, back and forth. Keep the conversation open. But the more you communicate with the other broker, they're learning from you also, and don't take it that if they become hostile or whatever, that's really who they are. A lot of it has to do with them learning on their own and trying to figure out how to negotiate all this stuff, and they don't get this training. Maybe they got something else going on in the background we don't know about, and they're really worked up about that, and they're coming across today like this. So think about those things and just kind of slow it all down and just go, you doing okay? I really want to work this out with you. What can we do? How can we negotiate this? What do you think? What could you tell your sellers? I know what I can tell my buyers. I mean, you're not going to give away the whole hand, but you just keep talking, keep talking, keep talking, keep talking, right? They're going to appreciate that from you. Okay. So then we get to appraisal next. Yay. Kind of feel a little less in control with appraisals, right? Again, when you're talking with these lenders, you're figuring out ahead of time who they're working with and that kind of stuff, with who they're going to send. I will say right now, appraisers are kind of feeling like we are. They're very overwhelmed with, how do I even price this? You guys are so out of control. And I wish, honestly, appraisers would just appraise it accordingly. It doesn't have to do with the bonus money that the buyer brought to win the deal. I wish they would just appraise the house as they appraise the house. And if that buyer wants to be upside down on it, then that's their choice. Okay, so even though you're on the buy side and you really want that house to appraise so that the lender will lend the whole thing, right? Versus, you know what, I prepared you, buyer. I told you that you're going to be paying extra. So that means you're not living in the house 2 years and reselling it. You're going to be living in the house 5, maybe 10 years, right? To get that money back out of it. And maybe not. It depends on how this market goes. But how many times have we said, right now we're like this, and it's going to start slowing down, and it's going to start getting realistic. And there's going to be another buyer's market again. Okay, we have been in this seller's market exceptionally long. Be prepared for that too, right? So every market that we're in, you're negotiating completely different. So what I say today may not even matter 3 years from now. Back in 2008, when we had the recession, negotiations were completely different. Completely. Sellers, there were signs up and down the streets. A seller couldn't get a buyer if their life depended on it. We had, and this was before electronic anything, I had files piled up on the desk that we had to slowly input into the MLS. There were so many. Back in 2008, 2009. And sellers were offering their children to sell the house, right? I'll give you this, I'll give you that, I'll give you this. What do you want? Get me out of this house. You want to offer me less? Yes, I'll take the hit and I'll pay the rest of the loan, or whatever the case is. I mean, there was plenty of short sales. Our own brokers lost their homes during that time. That was a tough time, but you know what? I feel like this time is even harder, believe it or not. This is just yucky. It's not fun. Sellers are greedy. They're unrealistic. So when we're negotiating, we need to make sure that we're developing those relationships to prepare them. And even as much as you try to prepare them, they're still going to be ugly. I just had one. I prepared her and I said, guess what? The first offer we got was the beginning of May. $113,000 over her list price. The 3 days before closing, lesson on me, Taylor and Jordan LeBlanc were not husband and wife. They're brother and brother. I thought they were spouses on the loan and that Taylor was taking the house in the deed and that Jordan wasn't going to be on the deed. And I don't know why. Sometimes it's a girlfriend or whatever, right? Significant other. I didn't dig deep enough. And so then when it came time, 3 days before closing, we're like, where's the CD? We need the closing disbursement so we can get to closing, right? Well, so something happened. Jordan got in an accident and now he's furloughed from his job. Who, what? You showed me these proof of funds. I didn't look at the proof of funds that yes, it was Jordan's, not Taylor's. So Jordan's now furloughed from his job and he needs that money to live on until he recovers from this accident. There's nothing we can do. It's completely out of our control. Accidents are accidents. That's why they're called accidents, right? You know, they lose their earnest money. My seller gets the earnest money, and what does she do? She calls a Colorado lawyer and says, what can I do to go after these buyers? Well, isn't that nice? Even though before we even got the earnest money, I said, okay, seller, I want you to understand. Okay, if they try to fight for this earnest money, we have to understand what their situation is. And I'm not advocating for the seller, but there's a point of bad juju that I don't want to be a part of, right? We're going to find the next buyer and it's going to be fine. And if you want me to up the earnest money for the next round, I'm happy to do that. And again, when you're negotiating earnest money, you better know what you have to face if you end up losing that earnest money or how you fight for it, right? So if you get above $7,500, it's not small claims court anymore. Okay, and so then you got to fight it even harder and you got to go through an official court system versus small claims. So that's why you always see maybe 7,500 more often than not. It's easier to get it back, a little less tedious than trying to get it through negotiating. But anyway, so I was even willing to up that for her. And she got greedy. She's like, no, I absolutely want all that earnest money. And I was like, okay, I'll have to, I'll write up the earnest money release and we'll get it all. I mean, they have defaulted. They were even trying to get the seller at that point, our next new negotiating point, they came to me and said, would she be willing to do an owner carry? Maybe. So I went to her and she was actually thinking about it. I was like, okay. So I sent her a promissory note that's in the system. You can actually find that in your CTM and your documents. Send them the promissory note. Sellers decide that. We cannot write up that documentation, okay? They do need to get a lawyer involved at that point. I can still finish out the contract, all right? But I can't negotiate the terms of this new loan and stuff, okay? So she had to come up with those ideas. Going back to the buyer, they were actually almost considering, except they just didn't have the money. And it was just really interesting how these sellers flipped their ideas of, well, I want all that $113,000. She already spent the money in her head. And it's really unfortunate, but hopefully each time I come across a seller like that, I can keep negotiating with them and keep telling them, be prepared. This is money you're going to give back to the buyer. This is Vegas money. This isn't yours. This is the buyer trying to win the deal so they can get their money back through inspections, get their money back through appraisal, get their money back as much as they can. Okay? Do not spend this money. That's another negotiating thing with your seller. And then the next newest thing that I've heard recently that somebody brought up, she was at a listing appointment and she needed to negotiate with that person and the seller's like, no, I want this price instead. She goes, don't be greedy. She had to finally tell them that. Don't be that person. Here's what's going on. And you got to tell them the whole scenario. Here's what happened in February. Then this is what happened in May. And as soon as June came, crashed. But you know what? It didn't really crash because you're still getting 25, 50 over, not 100, which is absolutely insane. 25 is still great, okay? But we lose sight. We completely lose sight when we're sitting here looking at all this, right? So make sure that, you know, when you're talking with people, you know, like I said, it's kind of that bad juju stuff. I don't want to be any part of that because it will come back tenfold later on. Okay. And I'm really, you know, man, everything you say on the phone or to somebody, you better put it in an email in writing exactly how so this is how I understand you want me to do or don't do. Put that to, if this is what you and the seller said, seller, this is how I understand it, and is that what you want me to do? Yes, I understand that's what you want me to do. Great. So now later, when you try to come after me about something, and she is trying, she wants to, here's the email. Gotcha. Okay. Don't put me in that he said, she said thing, right? She came back to me. She's like, so where's all your emails about you trying to get that earnest money back? Yeah, I did not send any emails to buyers because I don't communicate with the buyer. I communicate with the broker. Your earnest money release is the form that you filled out, you signed it, and we sent it. That is the only thing that happened. I do not have any emails. Here is the email that states on the earnest money release form, here is what you stated, this is what you want to do, please sign this form. She signed it. Okay, do not be dragging me into any lawsuits. I want no part of that. Okay, your employing brokers keep telling you, put it in writing. Document, 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 and do not delete those emails. Create a folder in your emails that say 123 Main Street and shove everything in there. Every single little thing, even the dumbest stuff. It's amazing how I have had to go back and like read not only the details, but the dates and the timeline when things were communicated. Right? Again, part of your negotiating to make sure you've got all your facts and that you're doing everything with all the best ethics that you can. Okay? Your job is on the line. Your license is on the line. Every time you're into one of these deals, you don't know what's going to come at the end. Pissed off buyers. We have got so many pissed off buyers right now. We have one that purchased 2 months ago. He wants out. He wants to sell and he wants to sell at the same price, but guess what just happened? It ain't the same price. I'm sorry you paid 100 grand over. You're not going to get it. So sit tight. We'll see you in 2 years. Maybe. Right? Hopefully that broker has documented everything that they can because that buyer is not happy. And you have a lot of unhappy buyers right now. A lot. And that's why the market slowed down. The buyers are very unhappy right now. So
There's a
are
lot
we
of-
advised? Go ahead. I can
I'm
shut up.
sorry. Does a lot of that have to do because they've waived inspections?
Being unhappy?
Yeah.
No, because usually in inspections, it's divulged, it's disclosed what to expect. I think that perfect scenario. I went to a board breakfast. Mountain Metro had the breakfast, and I went to that, and they had Scott Peterson there, who is just, I could listen to him all day long. He represents, you know, our Colorado along with Damien and stuff. And he goes, the buyers are upside down. In any relationship, right? What is one of the first things that stresses us out? Money, what's not in the bank, like that, right? Makes us trigger. Now they have no money. Now they can't do all the things that they wanted to do to the house. Now they got to wait longer to do those things to the house. And they're in the house and there's kind of some other stuff, you know, the carpet's kind of worn out, the paint's worn out, whatever. But man, I wanted this house because I wanted a roof over my head. Again, are you having those conversations at the beginning going, do you really want this? Do you want to lose it? And if not, do you know what you're getting into? Ask all those questions up front. and document. Document. Okay, you want me to offer this? Hey buyer, you said this price with these details, da, 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 da. Are you sure you're happy with all this? I like to break it out in the email because that contract is 20 pages and they don't know what they're looking at. And I cannot tell you how many times they say, look at this contract, and they didn't really look at it. They looked at the price and they looked at where they sign and how to do it. Right? Because half the time we're writing the contract over at the office, well, we tell them to go home because it's going to take me a while to get through this. And there's no reason for them to like, you know, hover over me while I'm trying to write this. At the same time, while I'm talking to my employee broker going, did I do this right? I keep trying to get that gold star and make it perfect, and I haven't gotten perfect yet. Darn it. I'm going to win one of these days. I'm going to pick up all the things that these employee brokers keep picking up on. But good thing that they're there for us to keep us out of jail and out of trouble, right? So make sure you let them see some stuff before you send it to your client. There's another thing too. Write that stuff ahead of time and get it to your employee broker to say, hey, can you review this for me before I send it off? I don't know what Bob likes to do. Generally, I don't, or I think Margaret actually will do that. And I know Kevin absolutely insists that you send stuff to him before you send it to anybody for any kind of signature. And avenues also, if you need that from Kevin, he's happy to do that, okay? It's not just Margaret. It's not just Bob. We're here to help everybody. Okay. Any questions so far? Is any of this helping you guys? Am I just rambling? I can do that really well.
No, it's interesting.
It can get a little sticky. It can get a little ugly. And I like, me personally, I like the challenge. I like the challenge to say how I can make this always a happy thing from beginning to end. Right? Because then I know I did well. And if it isn't happy through that, what can I change? What can I do differently? What can I do better? I also just had a seller who, I'm going to tell you guys right now, it's not even the big deals, it's the little deals. They're almost the hardest. A 300, he really should have been 250,000. Seller that I had, he tore out everything thinking he was going to renovate it. So there was no carpet, just the boards. He ripped up half of the linoleum in the kitchen, not very well. So it's like ripped looking. It was really strange how he tried ripping it out. The glue, everything was just bizarre. He took out some of the cabinets, and all the cabinets were piled up in the living room. He took the stove and threw it out on the driveway. It was a mess. He tried digging up the septic system to find out where the backup was happening from, and he thought he could fix it himself. There was a leak on the side of the house, and he tore down some of the siding. So then he had that all open up for the critters and things, right? So I go up to this listing and I'm like, okay, this is March when I evaluated it. April when I evaluated it. And I said, you know, I'm thinking about 300,000 in this market. And I'm gonna tell you right now, you don't even have to do anything. Leave the house as is. We're gonna tell everyone to bring their hammer, make it what they want their dream to be. You started the process for them, you know, and let's see what we get with investors and stuff. He haws around. I get back to him later, come May. May starts to change. This is when our market's changing. And I come back, he's not only, I said, can you, and the first appointment I said, can you clear out as much as you can? Stick it in the garage. Nobody cares about the garage, right? Use that as your staging spot. Whatever you got sitting around here, get your kitchen put back together. Everything else needs to go out in the garage. Just clear this out and let me see what you got. He even had the bathroom totally ripped up. The toilet's disconnected. No, the sink was disconnected from the wall, all this stuff, right? So I come back the second time. He's not only cleared out, he's almost over cleared out. So he ripped out more of the kitchen. So there's no refrigerator. He's working off of a little cooler thing. He's got a one of those camping burners that he's cooking off of, and he tells me, yeah, my wife doesn't want to hang out here. She keeps like hanging out with a friend. Well, yeah, no kidding. You don't even have a damn kitchen. I'm not living here, right? And he couldn't understand, and every dime mattered to him. And he kept telling me, yeah, we partied too much, and I really should have focused on, you know, my house. And then another time I come over, again, they're having a fight in front of me. Well, she kicked in the door, and she this, and blame. And that was the day that my life changed. So we sit outside because I don't want to be in this house anymore. It's so disgusting. We're sitting outside. She's out there crying because he's blaming her for the mess and the fact that they have zero money. Zero. He doesn't even know how he's going to pay for closing costs. I have negotiated my commission low. I said, this is the only market you're going to be able to sell in, or you're living here forever in your situation. Right? I asked him about his finances. I asked him how this is going to happen. Where are you moving to? We're going to move to some place where it's like $100,000 to buy a house. Great. Fantastic. So he's living in the Ozarks somewhere. I don't know. So we go through the whole process. And tell you right now, lesson learned to me, you better write every number down for these people that don't understand their own finances and why they're in that situation as it is. I thought I did tell him everything. I was working off percentages. I said, I can't tell you an exact amount because I don't know how much we're going to get, right? I don't even know how many offers we're going to get. And at this point, the way you've torn your house up, it's about worth 250. But you know what? I'm willing to go at 285 to price this house. And let's see what happens. But I want you to be prepared that we might have to go lower if you don't get any offers. Went through all this. It's going to be, you know, 3% for this, and it's going to be your property taxes for this. And I was laying everything out. I even showed him a redacted seller's settlement statement for a house that was similar in price. I said, here's what you can prepare for. Okay. He didn't look at everything because that's how he handles his finances. I turn a blind eye. I don't want to look. I don't want to know. Yeah. Okay. I understand. Come to do the offer, he gets 312 on the house. Okay, he's doing good. He's doing good. If he'd done that by himself and did a verba or a for sale, FSBO, for sale by owner, he would not have been over 300. There's no way. Somebody would have totally taken advantage of him. He wouldn't have been able to negotiate his own finances and everything else. Well, anyway, fast forward to closing day. We walk in, we're happy, da-da-da-da. So glad you helped us get to this point. I can't believe we're here. Looks at the settlement statement with the title rep. Oh my God, how much am I paying in commission? Oh, is this really happening? Even when you prepare them, right? You can almost not prepare them enough. And he didn't use email. His wife was the only one using email, so he was never reading any of the emails. I almost should have printed everything and brought it to him so he would have that documentation that way. Because I did put it in email and I did document it. He jumped out of that chair, cussing up a storm, yelling at me the whole time during the closing, wouldn't sign the document. She had to keep sliding the document over to him. Sign this. Calm down, Danny. Sign this. Calm down, Danny. Livid. Absolutely livid. Yeah, it is amazing how fast people turn or don't understand. And you will be the first person, they blame. Every time. All the more reason to document. I don't use net seller sheets. They're inaccurate. I find they're inaccurate. I've tried that in the past. I'd rather, if I'm going to hire this title company represent my listing, you can do it. So you know what? Can you please send them a sheet ahead of time as an estimate, because they pull taxes and they pull all that information anyway. So I'd rather that they do that information. I'd rather not make the mistakes and then they're already blaming me over here for this, and then they get to blame me for that. I try to remove myself from blame as much as possible. Yeah. Any questions so far? Any other questions? Anything I haven't covered?
Now, how long what's the turnover time for the title company to provide that? The net seller sheet, if you request it.
A day,
Okay.
depending on what they're doing that day. If they have closings and stuff, it just takes a little bit, but yeah, they can whip it out. They actually have a program. They even offer me the program. I have apps and stuff on my phone, but I'd rather just not do it. I'd rather they do a formal one. And they can do it pretty quickly, because
Okay.
they pull the tax records and all that.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Pretty boring subject, huh? It's a lot. There's a lot. I haven't even covered everything, I'll be honest. Make sure that you get someone to sit by your side the first 3 times at least. Even when you do it the first time, you're just like, this one's different. And now this one's different. And now this deal's different, right? Every single one's different. And every time I get to the next contract, I keep thinking, yeah, I got this. And then this has changed. Or these people are different. Or this person thinks differently. Or this broker's different, right? Everything is a variable in everything that we do. And we got to take it all in and navigate through all of this. All right, so let's see. We still have 45 minutes. Okay, I want to make sure I wasn't talking so much that I got over time. These can get long, I know. All right, what have I not covered that you still want to know? Oh, you guys are so quiet. Yeah, I like the wait too.
All right, I
Doesn't
have
just even
one.
now, I talk a lot. Go ahead.
All right, since we're working with negotiations, what about during the listing presentation? And you're trying to, when they sellers, will ask the question about your commission. And why is it so much? It seems like that seems to be a big question. How do you support that number? With negotiation skills, can you give me an example of how you'd handle that?
Yeah. I actually have a process, an absolute, you have to stick to your process. So number one, figure out what your process is going to be every time you go into a listing presentation, okay? A listing appointment. So I always start off with, I come to the door, I say, give me a tour. So I always make them give me a tour first. Now we've gone through the house. They've showed me all the great things they love about their castle, right? We were talking. So now I'm getting to know them during that tour. I might take pictures with my phone to remember some things, i.e. the furnace or whatever. So I can bring it back to Kevin and go, what is that? Right? I see some unusual things. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Okay. Again, I'm not the expert on some of that stuff, but I get to now get to know them. And as they're talking through the house, you're getting to know how they communicate, how they think, right? Now you're getting to know them. Okay, now let's go sit down and let's discuss some things. So then you start off with, and again, I have all these pages printed off and I haven't gone through a single one of them. That's my listing presentation. I never go through it. I never hand it to them at the beginning. I want to talk with them. I want to wait. I want to shut up and I want to ask questions and then I want to hear from them. So I will ask questions. So what were you expecting to want to list this house at? I ask them first, right? So if you had all the money in the world, what would you do to this house that you would want to change? Now they've given you all the uglies. Now you're writing down all the uglies that you know ahead of time. You better make sure that those show up in your SPD. Haha. Okay, because you don't help them ever fill out the SPD. And you're talking through these things, and then you're talking about the market. And then you're talking about how you're going to be different than all the other brokers, because you know what I do? I put a sign in the yard like everybody else, and I put it on the internet like everybody else. There's nothing different. We all do the same thing. And I will say this, you know, and I understand that you're bringing some other brokers, and I appreciate that. You know, you should do your diligence and make sure that you are shopping properly. But here's what makes me different is I negotiate like a bulldog, and I will not leave money out there that you deserve. Okay. Oh, well, you know what? I didn't ask. So how much do you charge for commission? I charge 6%. Okay. You know why? Because I gave them all this value ahead of time. We did the tour, we did the talk, we did everything. Now the commission makes sense, because when there's no value, money matters. Every single time. If you don't give them value, that money matters. Okay, so give them all the value ahead of time. Do your whole presentation. Oh, by the way, I also have this bling bling stuff for you to read later if you have any questions. My card's in there. You know, I have some additional information for you to prep for, you know, pack it, sack it, sell it when you're getting your house ready. I'm happy to bring in a stager, you know, all the things that I talked about, but you can read about it again if there's something that you've forgotten about in our discussion today. I don't read this to them. When I start doing that, then I start doing what I did at the beginning of this class. I'm like, okay, where am I? What did I want to share with you, right? You do that during a listing presentation too. You've got to make it natural. You got to talk. Talk with them, listen to them, ask questions, and then write down all the answers. Is there anything else you want to tell me, right? You keep writing. And usually what I'll do is I'll print off a tax record of the public records. And I always bring a copy for me and a copy for them. And on the back of mine, I'm writing all these notes to make certain that I know everything, so that when I turn around and I have to put it in the MLS, I have all the details about this house. Okay, there's a fireplace here, and it's a gas fireplace, a wood fireplace, whatever, right? All these different things. There's a barn. What kind of barn is it, right? Or they added on a garage, you know, how big is a garage? How tall is the doors for the garage? Big deal for these guys who've got trucks, right? So there's just a lot of different details that you end up writing. And so you're going through all that conversation and finding out about things, and then they realize that you're interested and you want to know more about their listing. And that's usually the 6% comment doesn't even faze them. Does not even, well, unless you like, you know, your house is $250,000 and you have no money, and then at closing they're screaming and yelling at you, but you know, then there's that. Can't always win. Some things too that you can always present as a value in the beginning is offering a home warranty. That is actually a really big value, and it kind of saves you in that inspection negotiating later, or later on when you get the surprise that something happened. Fridge crashed, furnace crashed, whatever crashed. Now you got that already in place. And when you start that warranty ahead of time, it actually covers the seller during the time they're still in that house, and then it transfers over to the buyer. So that's kind of a nice little piece. You can even tell the sellers, I'm going to go ahead and get this home warranty started. Now it covers you if anything should happen on your watch before closing day. It's a nice little feature. I always give an hour of staging time if you want to have that. Your house is beautiful. I don't think it needs it. Right? You know, and really, in part of the conversation and part of the questions, it's okay, where are you going next? Why are you selling? So if they're going to sell and they're going to buy down in town, well, if you're looking for assistance in buying as well, then I'm willing to negotiate, you know, my commission at that point, because I'm going to also help you buy. Yes.
Well, fired up in here today, aren't you? Cool.
I don't know. I'm the only one talking mostly.
All right. I'm taking off. We'll
Okay,
come back later.
bye. So, you know, you're presenting all these different things ahead of time. I even talk about my photography. That's another value that I talk about ahead of time. I always bring in a professional photographer no matter what, including that piece of crap house that had a missing kitchen and stuff torn up everywhere. Sorry, I cuss like a sailor. I gotta shut up. So, yeah, but the thing is you gotta approach it going, you know what? Seller started the process for you. And here's everything that we want you to know. Disclose it all. Tell everybody everything, right? Get it all out there. And I will always have a professional photographer. And I couldn't tell you how excited Danny was when he was walking around with my photographer. Oh, look at that view. You mean right there through the trees? Okay, we got it. Sure, right? And it will make a difference. I don't think I would have gotten over 300,000 if I had not had a professional photographer. It makes a difference every single time. And also, when you're negotiating, you can still negotiate with those people that are working for you. Your photographers, if they don't do a good job, go back to them and say, do it again. Get your butt back out there and get good pictures. I kid you not. You want another job? You want me to refer you? Do a good job. Okay? Hold them to it. Title companies, you can negotiate with title companies. I just had a terrible experience with one. I will not name who they are. Could be the situation that they're in, because we're all fighting how to hire people right now who don't want to work. I get it. So I try to be patient. However, there were some things that came up that a title company should know and do every time. By the way, title company, can you come to my office and do a closing? Why not? You know what? You know, it'd be great is that you bring that other broker into your office. Here's what we do, and they get all the excitement and everything going on, and this is what we do in our office. Right? Another piece. Did that help, Jackie? Did I go totally off on a tangent?
No, it was great. You made me laugh too. So that's always a win for me.
Good, I'm glad I can make people laugh. What else? What else do you guys want to know? We still have a half hour, or we can end it here. It's totally up to you. It's a lot of information, I know. Don't forget to finish that deal at the end. Okay, so you're going to get some of that piece through Ignite, close the deal. So what that is making sure that you keep that relationship going with that broker, keep that relationship going with your client still. My seller moved to Florida. I'm still going to stay in touch with her. You never know. You know, you keep it on going. You want those referrals. You want your business to stay alive. Because guess what? Now you've got a closing. Now you're unemployed again. Now you got to start over, unless you keep it going, right? Keep those communications open. All right, guys. Y'all look exhausted. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I hope I see some of you in person sooner than later. And again, don't ever hesitate to pull me aside if you ever have a question about anything. There's no stupid question in this business. Trust me. I've asked them all. You learn through everything. We've all experienced it. Okay. I ask the most stupid questions of all time, and I just do it because there's always something else tied to it, right? It's not just that little question, but something else. So just keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. Okay. All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you
very much.